This is pretty cool to come across this book. Not a coincidence, right? When I talked about the power of fire magic, and particularly when that comes to sex magic, right? This book is The Secrets of the Immortals, and uh, and by the way, before I go a little bit further into some of the things that Saint Germain with Joan of Arc covers some of these things when it comes to magic. And when I'm androgynous or perfectly balanced, which simply means that two magnets, a hot and cold magnet, fusion and fission, come together to become one as an eternal blast furnace. That blast furnace is eternal spirit of fire. Okay. And so they were discussing when Saint Germain had talked about that the spirit of fire was the most powerful of all. But I'm also reminded a magnetic compass, the center point of origin of the first cosmic level sun, the center point is balanced. The sphere is balanced, the cross, right? So you have 4 points, right? 4 points at the end of each line, right? And so that's the cross. When that cross is in perfect balance between the north, top, the one to the right, the one to the bottom, and the one to the left, every sector, right, or every quadrant is in perfect balance with the center, which is equal distribution unto all, which means the center point of an eternal sun is gifting electrons, or if you will, the primal sound and light field is always on. It is never off. So that means that that is an eternal sun that is experiencing eternal consciousness, which is pure light, which is pure eternal love. That's the pre-phase. And so, and I've mentioned this before, that's what it means when you experience having a pure heart, which means your aura is pure, right? And what makes your aura pure is the purifier. And what is the purifier? The spirit of fire. Burns off goo, codes, mutated and distorted waves that represent distorted language, which is distorted language of music, which is distorted math, which means the geometry doesn't work correctly. So those are error codes, or what you could say is a virus in a computer that is distorting and corrupting the codes because the state of consciousness is corrupted. Its consciousness is corrupted, which means it's not running God's math. Okay. So he talks about here, well, the chances of coming across another person whose magical abilities have been awakened are very slight, and those of finding someone with as pure an aura as yours next to impossible. A silver aura is incredibly rare. Joan was the last human to have one, and she was born in 1412. You are very special indeed, Sophie Newman. So he went on to say that my teacher said that there are those who will say that the magic of air or water or even earth is the most powerful magic of all. They are wrong. The magic of fire surpasses all others. So the way that I experience this is that when the spirit of fire, the spirit of water, right, the living spirit of fire, the living spirit of water, the living spirit in the air, and the living spirit of earth, which includes all the molecules, the spirit molecule, right, and the elementals, which is the elemental command. Now we're into the 144 elements. So when the molecules and the elements of every unit of consciousness energy is experiencing what we are, which is the purity of our heart, which is the purity of our consciousness, then we are in balance with all the units because they are experiencing the balance in us. So that's the balance of the cross, which is the center point of origin of a universal and galactic template. So the fire in each one of those points on a cross work together to maintain the balance, which is the equilibrium states between earth, wind, water, and fire, right? Now we're into the thermal gradients. Now we're into the pressure systems between a hot and a cold magnet. And now we're back to the minus / the plus, right? Memory plus, memory minus. Memory plus, memory minus. And now we're into the reaction states between the two magnets, which is the opening and closing of a magnetic moment. The felt moment of a magnetic moment. The speed at which phasing in and out, phasing in and out. And so he referred to this when he said that fire consumes air, it can heat water to mist, and can crack open the earth. It can heat water to mist, vapor, the ethers, the ether vapors. She watched as a volcano spewed molten rock high into the air. Fire destroys, but it also creates. A forest needs fire to thrive. Certain seeds depend on it to germinate. And so finally over here he talks about how fire can heal, it can seal a wound, can cut out disease. Saint Germain continued earnestly. Golden cinders of fire burned in his pale blue eyes. It is unlike any other magic because it is the only one directly linked to the purity and strength of your aura. Almost anyone can learn the basics of earth, air, or water magic. Spells and incantations can be memorized and written down in books, but the power to ignite fire comes from within. The purer the aura, the stronger the fire, and that means, Sophie, that you must be very careful because your aura is so pure. When you unleash the magic of fire, it will be incredibly potent. Has Flamel warned you not to overuse your magical powers, lest you burst into flames. And I nearly did that in the inside of the gospel mission when I realized, slow it down, cool it down, cool it down, cool it down. So yeah, this is going to be some fun reading. But I wanted to share that particularly with you, Conjoy, because we sort of grew together, right? And have a beautiful communication relationship with each other. And so that's, it's all about learning. We learn through each other. I learn through you what you experience. You share with me what it is that you're experiencing from what you're learning. So we're learning together, right? By communicating with each other, who we both are together, right? And so I've always known this ever since I was a little kid, right? I run an open cosmic level receiver and a transmitter, right? So that means that love is the absence of lies, right? Love tells no lies, right? So that means I'm not afraid to share with you everything that I've experienced, right? So now we get into when I was processing that in my youth, for example, and thinking about this, that when you tell your children bedtime stories and you realize you're holding things in memory that are still there in memory. Now we're back to no memory, pre-phase consciousness, no memory, memory, batteries required, no batteries required, right? And how that relates to things that we share with others that might trigger a negative magnetic reaction state, right? Or a lower frequency, right? So in other words, they're experiencing being in a state of joy, and then you decide to share with them with something, and all of a sudden their smile goes to a droop the other way, instead of the lines on the mouth being like a wide U, like an arc, right? An arc like this, right? Like a wide U with the arms both up in a state of love and joy. And then you see it reversed to the bottom, right? This way. The ellipsis, the arc, is now upside down, flipped the other way. Oh. See? Now they're experiencing the emotional reaction state of, whoa. So now the child is experiencing the trauma that is represented by the experience that you're communicating to that child. See? And I wouldn't want to do that, because I don't want my child to experience the trauma that I've experienced that is held in my memory, right? So now we're into the sine wave of omissions. We omit that information unless the child can read it in you anyway, by virtue of the resistance to share it and communicate it. Resistance, resistors, and capacitors. So now we're back to honing your skills in the art of fire communication, which is the purity of the light, which is the purity of the consciousness, which is the purity of the soul that's running the vehicle. The communication platform that we use to communicate with all the others, right? So I thought I'd share that with you just as a follow-up, Conjoy, about the power of magic. You know, the spirit in water, the living spirit in the water, the living spirit in the air currents. It's so beautiful when I go out into the yard. Whenever I go out there, there's a spirit of the wind welcoming me out there. And it's like, thank you very much. I love you too. Right? So we have a relationship with all the spirits. So all the living spirits are living sacred temples of light. Pillars of light, which are pillars of love. Right? So God's love is in the planet. God showed up. We're all here. Right? And so these are healing missions. Right? To heal all the others. Healing ourselves. I've always loved what it's like to experience when you're giving love to others and you're experiencing not only the trauma that they've experienced, but the trauma that's still held in memory, cellular memory, and then try and think about that at every cellular level, at every level of consciousness inside of a planetary consciousness terrain, right? Because that's what I experienced as a little boy. So I sort of realized, how long is this going to take? Now we're back to the Bardo, right? Now we're back to the quantum probability function. How long is it going to take for the sound and light patterns to be non-distorted in order for that unit, that software, to be able to experience what? The purity of its own heart, or the purity of its own consciousness, right? That is experiencing the balance or the equilibrium state, right? So that there aren't any distortions in the codes, which is no distortions in the DNA, represented by that particular race line. Now you're into different race lines, right, that form alliances by virtue of networked. They're networked, like lines of communication, which is the language of DNA, right, that represents what they choose to do as agreements amongst themselves. So their consciousness is linked to each other. And by being linked together, that becomes a formation of consciousness. When that formation of consciousness is accelerating, a greater degree of siphoning off more soul energy to expand the acceleration of a black hole, right? Then that's when you get into the known unknown knowns, the probability function that locks them in. That's like phase locked, because there isn't enough time for them to be able to recover what it is that they lost as a result of what they do to others in their own mirrors, right? So now that's why I mentioned before in some of my videos, which I knew as a kid, they're in a race against time when there is no time. But it's not like they're not intelligent enough to know that they're going to reach a trigger point, right, in which failsafe automatically kicks in, right? And when that happens, they're locked in, okay, which means the implosion becomes a known, which means they know. So imagine that you know that, and that's panic. Because now they're going to look for every opportunity and every technology means that they have a way to extend themselves, right? Through the use of what? Artificial intelligence, finite dead light. So they extend themselves through dead light by virtue of the access they have through implants to suck energy off of those that are not in black holes, which means they're connected through safe zones, if you will, to experience eternity, the primal sound and light field. So therefore, that's how you get into targeted individuals, because they realize that within your auric energy field, you're still experiencing what love is, the real McCoy, the real living light energy. If you will, they're experiencing God's energy, which is what love is. Creation energy, the single point of origin from which it all began, right? So that's the nature, between one and the other, if you will, or two magnets that come together to become one, right? Which means we're equal in balance, or we're equal unto all that we're gifting love to, right? And that makes it simple. That's what we do. That's why we're here, right? Working as teams, performing our missions. Service contracts, we're always in service, right? Hub servers, multiversal hub servers, spoked wheels, right? Communication platforms, servers, we're always in service. Have a great day, Conjoy. We love you all, girl. Bye now.